Just look at that smile. You can tell this is it. This is her moment. Her life's work has come down to this. If this was poker, she'd be going all in.
Okay, Yvette Cooper, it is your turn, and your question is to Jeremy Corbyn.
So it is. So, Jeremy, there's issues that we agree on, and Jeremy's you're trying to look for another camera to read the question. There are issues that we agree on that we should oppose George Osborne's 40% cuts. But the issue that I've raised concern with you about is your proposal for the Bank of England to print money to pay for schools or transport. In those circumstances, do you believe that the government would have to pay that money back to the Bank of England, or do you think that this is free money?
We put £385 billion worth of money called quantitative easing into the banks to bail them out in 2008. We bought bank shares and put them in a holding company, some of which Osborne is now selling off, and he shouldn't because they're not his to sell, they're ours to keep.
Isn't it nice for Jeremy Corbyn just to remind the panel that we did bail out the banks and we did just give them $375 billion to put on their balance sheets? Yvette Cooper doesn't appear to have an issue with the fact that money was created out of thin air. What she has an issue with is that money created out of thin air should go straight to the bankers.
And my suggestion is that some of that quantitative easing ought to be made available, together with other sources such as government bonds, to fund a national investment bank so that we have a growing economy which can improve the infrastructure in all parts of the UK, particularly the rail infrastructure, also be able to fund the very necessary housing building, particularly council house building, that this country desperately is crying out for, and an efficient and effective and inexpensive way of funding public investment rather than the private finance initiatives which have been pursued by both this government and the last government, which are costing so much, so dear in both the NHS and in education. It's not inflationary. Japan used quantitative easing after 10 years of a flatlining economy in order to boost growth. I would have thought it's a sensible and reasonable precautionary thing to do.
Did you hear him talk about private finance initiatives? Well, those things make bankers tons and tons of money. This is why the other candidates don't agree with Jeremy Corbyn on this issue, because they're all establishment. They'll be thinking, how dare you do something for the people? How dare you try and strip the bankers of profit that leads to massive bonuses? As an aside, Andy Burnham has never, not once ever, voted against his party in all of his political career. He is establishment through and through. Nothing will change under Burnham. He's just irrelevant. Anyway, back to the video. Yvette Cooper now shows us that she has some passion, that she has some balls, and not just Ed Balls balls of her own. Just watch.
But you haven't answered the question.
Yes, I have.
Because actually, no, you haven't. Because actually what you're offering people is false hope. For a start, quantitative easing has stopped because the economy is now growing. The reason that Japan was able to keep going and doing it for many years is because they went into serious slump for a long term. It's absolutely right to support the economy when it is in crisis and when it is in a serious recession. But once the economy is growing, if you simply keep printing money at that time, that pushes up inflation. Second thing is that when the Bank of England prints that money, and even through the quantitative easing, it has to still be paid back. So actually, you're still not answered. Is the money for the schools and the hospitals or the transport going to have to be paid back? Because my fear is what you're doing is you are offering people false promise. It sounds brilliant. Everybody claps because everybody wants to see the schools, the hospitals, the infrastructure to be done. But if we are really going to be able to deliver the schools, the hospitals, the transport infrastructure, we've got to be credible enough to properly pay for it. We cannot do that if we just promise to print money we haven't got. It's dishonest. It's false promise. We've got to offer people real hope.
That's right. We have to carry on doing what we've always done and magically expect a different result because the bankers have to have their money because they truly run the show. Look at Yvette Cooper in that segment. She got really passionate, didn't she? She was talking way too fast. I'm surprised she didn't just run into the middle of the stage, hands out, on her knees, and beg for people to vote in a leader that will keep the same old banker-loving game going.
Are we going to go back to private finance initiative with the 600% cost of investment in schools and hospitals, because that surely is a model that has failed?
That's exactly what she wants, Jeremy. She wants to be the leader so she can do nothing different from what the Tories would do. You, Jeremy, are a threat to people because you want to do something different. At least try something different anyway.
It's like private finance on steroids. It is worse than that. You want to just put quantitative easing in. You are not being straight with people, and that's why there's huge numbers of economists have said it doesn't stack up. It's not fair on people, and it will fall apart. And what will we be, the Labour Party, if we go to people with false promises? It's like Nick Clegg before the 2010 election, a whole load of false promises that then fell apart. It's not fair, and we will let people down if we do.
Wow, she's on one, isn't she? Just look at that face. You would have thought she was telling off a little boy who stole her last favourite cookie. This is the most passionate I've heard a politician in ages. But isn't it funny that she is really passionate about not helping people and about not putting people over profits, but continuing to help bankers? Is she a Labour candidate, or is she just a ringer for the Conservatives? Maybe that's why less than 3% thought that she'd won the debate. Kermit the Frog would have scored more than that. That must be some kind of low-scoring record in a live debate for Sky, or anyone else for that matter. And did you pick up the talking points? Tell everyone that he is lying and not being straight with people, that he will let people down, that it's just not fair on people, that it's going to give people false hope. Well, I personally have had false hope from politicians all my life, so what's different there? But instead, let's keep going down the same old road we've been travelling down for years and years and years. Through a Tory government, then a Labour government, then a Tory government, then a Labour government. Let's just carry on down the path that's put us in £1.5 trillion of debt with an £80 billion deficit, and that has made the rich so much richer and allowed bankers to carry on doing what the hell they like. And let's make sure the poor continue to get poorer. Yeah, I'd back Yvette Cooper if I was completely bloody insane.
I'm not sure if you've had a chance to look at the proposals, and they are proposals that have been put forward and have been supported by a very large number of economists, including Nobel Prize-winning economists, who say this is a sensible and reasonable idea that we do a combination of, during a period of recession, you use quantitative easing, during a period of growth, you use government bonds as a way of funding development within our society. The problems we've got, and I repeat it, is that we are funding public services by the sale of assets, by private finance initiative, and we are losing control of those assets, and it's costing a lot of people very dear in cuts that are being made in health and education in order to pay for the voracious appetite of these private finance companies that have taken things over.
If you ditch the printing money... If you ditch the printing money, we could set out a credible alternative that means we don't have to do George Osborne's 40%.
And what exactly is a credible alternative, Yvette? Borrow more money from the bankers at interest to make the bankers even richer while, say, cutting 35%? Remember, Yvette Cooper is married to Ed Balls, the very man who was part of the government who allowed the bankers to run amok, mostly causing the problems that stem from 2008. Can you imagine him bending her ear before they go to bed? Yvette Cooper doesn't want to try anything new. She wants the status quo, the same old Tory-like policies.
Problem is, if all you promise is something that won't stack up, you will let the Tories get away with this. You will let the Tories be able to get away with their 40% cuts to our public services. I think that would be devastating. It's an ideology of austerity that will rip apart our public services and it will hugely undermine our economy. But if we're really going to stand up to them, we've got to be strong enough and credible enough to do it, not just pretend that money will come out of thin air by printing it. Let's have a strong, real alternative, and we should work together on doing that, but you're not not doing so because you're offering people
Yvette,
false hope in...
Offering false hope, allowing the Tories to get away with 40% cuts. All sounds very good from Team Cooper, but you have to remember, she's offering nothing new. She would introduce Tory-like policies. People want change. People want to try something different.
Very pleased that you accept that the politics of austerity is one of the problems we face. We went into the last election promising cuts. We went into the 2010 election promising cuts. Are we going to go into a 2020 election because Osborne will not have balanced the books by that stage, saying, well, an incoming Labour government, the first thing we've got to do is make more cuts in order to make ourselves credible?
Jeremy Corbyn offers something other than the rich getting richer and the poor being allowed to just about survive. Not all of them, as Ian Duncan Smith's policies are now proving, the current government are killing them off slowly. Yvette Cooper wants this. She wants the status quo to continue. She wants to help the rich and cut more against the poor. Unbelievable.
I say invest to grow.
Yeah,
you can't cut your way to
you don't
prosperity.
grow-
You grow your way to prosperity.
The bottom line is this. People have just about had enough of the bankers getting rich on the back of austerity cuts. It's not a recession, it's a robbery. If you listen to the mainstream media, they'll tell you that the sky would fall if Jeremy Corbyn gets elected, and we would have 150 years of Tory reign. But I like what he has to say. Far from him making Labour unelectable, he's saying an awful lot of things that resonate with the general public. They can relate to what he's saying, so maybe he'll surprise us all. I think the Labour Party, if I'm honest, will try to get rid of him from day one, because the Labour Party, being an establishment party, cannot allow someone to lead it who doesn't want war, who doesn't want to make cuts, who doesn't want to support the bankers through thick and thin, regardless of the effects it has on the general public. The Labour Party are as in it together as the Tories are. Most people want change, but they'll argue till they're blue in the face for the status quo without even realising it. Let's at least think about trying something different, eh? What have we got to lose? But the other candidates, oh my god, they're just so bland. They're so obvious. They should have all been wearing grey tonight. I mean, how can you take Andy Burnham seriously when he has spent his political career doing absolutely everything the establishment want him to do? Not once has he voted against the party. Do you think with his slavish voting record that Andy Burnham will introduce the changes that are required to revive this country? Or do you think he will continue to do exactly what he's been told to do, just like he has done his whole bloody political career? Jeremy Corbyn has voted against his party over 500 times. That's a good thing in my eyes. Yvette Cooper is married to Mr. Let's Deregulate the Banks Ed Balls. Do you think she's going to help the people over the bankers? Of course she isn't. She is going to again do exactly what the bankers tell her to do. And Liz Kendall, well, enough said on her. I haven't got a vote in this leadership election, so I don't have a dog in the fight. But I will enjoy politics a little bit more if Jeremy Corbyn is elected. We need to try something different.